Good morning again, boys and girls. So glad to be back with you this morning. I hope you just heard an awesome welcome message from Mr. and Miss Mateo, Ashley and Dan. We're so thankful for them. They teach the third grade boys, and we're going to ask different teachers to come in and just give you a welcome each week. We want you to be able to see their faces and for them to feel connected to you. So we hope that you will see some more fun faces in the coming weeks as we continue to teach virtually like this, and you continue to go through the playlist. And I hope you are worshiping loud and worshiping our Savior during this time. And parents, if you're watching, just to let you know, we're going to be sending an email sometime next week or the second week in May to kind of give you the update on summer. We know everybody's kind of wondering, and we are too, but we're going to give you the update probably the second week of May on kind of where we stand on things. So kids, if your parents are not watching, you can tell them, Miss Dana's going to send you an email this week or next about summer, okay? We know that you're wondering, and we are too. So we are just praying by faith that God will lead us in all our decisions. But you guys, so I hope that last week you loved hearing from Miss Jane and Rahab all about the story of how Joshua defeated Jericho. And we know that God, the same God who promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob the promised land, it's called the promised land because he promised it, is the land that Joshua is able to take the Israelites into. But we also know that God told Moses something a long time ago. He told him, when you get to Canaan, you got to defeat them because they are not my people. They're not obeying me. You're going to have to defeat them when you go in. They can't really stay there. So what's happening so far, Joshua's defeated Jericho, and he did that because God told him, hey, walk around it. And on that seventh day, the walls fell. I mean, that's just a miracle. And Rahab was used in that story to help the men that were going in to spy, and she hid them, and so her family was saved. But we are learning today about another time that God protected Joshua and the Israelites and helped them fight against people to do what he's called them to do to get their land. Well, you guys, where we're starting today, we're in Joshua 10 and 11. And chapter 24. We're teaching in 10 and 11 and then kind of closing with 24. So if you want to kind of read through all that during the week, that's where we are. So we're starting today picking up after Joshua defeated Jericho, and the Israelites, he's still leading the Israelites, and he's still listening to God, and that's so important because God said in order to make it, we know that different people didn't make it to the promised land. They didn't do what he asked, and we know that the Israelites had to wonder because they kept complaining and not understanding and not going where they were supposed to go, and God's saying, you're just taking steps back if you would just listen to me and obey me. And Joshua, this is so neat, Joshua's name actually means the Lord saves, or the Lord is salvation. And so Joshua is leading the Israelites into battle, and he is leading them so well, and they're defeating these other places and armies and people, but it's God who's using them. So yes, it is Joshua leading, but he's also knowing that it's God who saves, not him. It's God who's able to use him. So I think that's really important that we remember too, God can use anybody at any time when we obey him and we're listening to his voice. So that's where we pick up today. The Israelites just defeated Jericho and Ai. And so now they've made a peace with the people of Gibeon. So making a peace meaning they've become friends. And the people of Gibeon are trusting God, and they're loving the Israelites, and they're just trusting one another, allies, which means they're friends, and they work together. Okay, so they believe in God. Well, there were these 5 kings who were like, not having it. They did not love God. They did not want to be with God. And they came together and said, hey, one of the kings called the other 4. And he said, hey, Gibeon loves the Israelites and they love God. And they were scared of God. They knew God was powerful, even though they didn't necessarily believe it all and understand it all. They knew that the people were being protected somehow, so they were scared of them. So they said, hey, let's go attack Gibeon. Let's not make the Israelites stronger with these people. Let's go attack Gibeon because they are friends with the Israelites, so we cannot have that. So the kings and their armies were going to defeat Gibeon. They were going to go battle. And Gibeon called for Joshua and said, Joshua, we need your people. We need the Israelites, and we need you, and we need your God. We need our God to protect us. Joshua didn't bat an eye. He listened to the Lord, and the Lord said, hey, go. So Joshua and the Israelites went to defeat with Gibeon to defeat these 5 kings and all their armies. And Joshua had to do it in a sneaky way. He had to go through the night with the Israelites and the armies, and they kind of had to sneak up on on these 5 kings and their armies, and he said, hey, God, we really need your help. Like, we can help Gibeon fight them, but we need you. And God wants us to need him. He knows that he's got to be the one to help us. So God did something amazing again. While Joshua and the men of Gibeon and the Israelites snuck up to defeat these 5 kings and their armies, when they went to go fight them, God did something awesome, and he sent hail. Now, hail is like the big icy raindrops that come out of the sky. They're huge balls, and they can be really, really big. He sent hail in order to confuse the kings and the armies and not knowing what to do. So he's helping them defeat them by sending hail to confuse them. And then Joshua's like, I still need more time. We're still not defeating them like we need to. So here's where it gets so awesome. Not only had God already sent hail when it was not expected, we hear about our weatherman and what they say is coming. Well, it came out of the blue. Then they did this. Joshua prayed a really specific prayer. Sometimes you and me, we may pray things like, God, please protect us. Please be with us. We love you, God. But Joshua's here praying a very specific prayer. He says, hey, God, I need you to make the sun not go down so it won't get dark and the moon to not rise. I need them to just stay put. Well, y'all, that's a very, very specific ask. And Joshua wasn't just saying, hey, God, help me defeat these armies. He said specifically, make the sun stand still and the moon. I don't want the moon to rise and I don't want the sun to go down. I need light longer. So God did that. He answered Joshua's faithful and specific prayer, and he stopped the sun from going down. And Joshua and the Israelites and Gibeon were able to defeat these 5 kings and all these men. And y'all, that is just amazing to me, because guess what happened? The sun stayed shining for 24 hours. The sun never went down and it never became dark, but the next day happened. And that's never happened since, and it never happened before, where the sun just stayed where it was and the moon stayed. Now, y'all, if you've studied science or you know how it works, even though the sun is moving through the sky, the sun's really not moving. The sun's staying still, but the earth is turning. Okay, so it's really the earth. So God had to stop the earth from rotating or move the sun to the other side, whichever one it was. God had to do something miraculous in order to make the sun stay shining for 24 hours for them to defeat the army, and he did it. Joshua asked it, and God did it so that they could defeat the king and the men. And it's really amazing what God will do when we have the faith and when we obey. And sometimes he doesn't answer our prayers as specific as he answered Joshua's that day, but sometimes he does. But regardless, he says, come to me, pray for specific things. I answer them in the way I feel God is, he wants to answer them, but he always wants us to come to him in faith, knowing that he can do that. So after this, God gave the Israelites peace and rest for many, many years. And Joshua actually ended up dying later on, and we'll learn what happens after that next week. But he ended his life by listening and obeying God and leading the Israelites to the promised land. And he did what he was called to do. And it's such an awesome story to remember just what God will do when we seek him out. So remember, Moses started out, and then it was passed to Joshua to lead his people. But the promised land that was promised way long ago, Joshua helped, and the Lord saves. Remember Joshua's naming, the Lord saves. God helped him in order to save the Israel. He used him to help the Israelites go where they were supposed to go, and the Gibeons who were friends with them. And anybody that's come up against God, they don't win. God always wins, and he's in control. And I hope that we can remember that now when we're in these weird times and we're praying, and maybe sometimes we're fearful, maybe sometimes we're not know what's going to happen. You may ask your mom, and I hope that you're praying all the time for God to stop the virus and for God to be with you, and he is, and God is working. And even when we can't see him, he's working, and he's in control, and he is mighty to save, and he will do it. And I love that Joshua reminds us of this in this story. So guys, I hope that you will go back this week and read Joshua 10 and 11. And then if you want to read throughout and get to 24 to kind of see what happened, more details of this story. But it's just an awesome one to remember. I'm so thankful God has taken us through these stories during this time in the Gospel Project, it is not a coincidence. God knew a long time ago that we would be here right now and that we'd be teaching these stories from the Old Testament just right after we celebrated what Jesus did on the cross. It's fun to go back and see how it's all intertwined in the Bible. So guys, we love you. We thank you for listening. Go watch the Gospel Project video that reminds us of the story that we just learned and finish worshiping with us. And I hope that you guys have an awesome week. And we look forward to seeing you back next week. And remember tomorrow to look for the email to give you the missions challenge and the verse challenge and a family activity. And keep learning Joshua 1, 8 and 9 and hold it in your hearts. Love you guys. Have a great week.